Hello, good afternoon, everybody. We'll begin shortly. Good morning to all our guests joining from the overseas, and good afternoon to all those joining us closer to home. I am Sanaya Vandrewala, Assistant Professor and Postgraduate Course Coordinator at KRVIA, and it is my pleasure to introduce this year's Urban Dialogue, Thesis Symposium 2021. All cities are characterized by dynamic change. Urbanism can be understood as distinctive social and cultural patterns that develop within the cities. In order to understand a city's ecosystem, it is essential to recognize interactions and connections between the living and non-living parts. Patterns and processes resulting from these interactions are required for better understanding of the city. Cities form centers where political and economic power relations are instituted and maintained. Within urban centers, multiple cultures develop, interact, and create social change. Urban design and urban conservation can be understood as a tool to facilitate this everyday social interaction through the strategic design of public and private spaces, creating a sense of real communities. It is building of these communities that leads to community-led regeneration, that is the meeting that needs of the present alongside enabling the capabilities of future generations, deeply rooted as part of a legacy. This physical sense of neighborhood and community cohesion can enhance community stability, reinforce desirable social patterns and networks, and contribute to a sense of reassurance and security. Thus, the disciplines of urban design and urban conservation allow generations of people to enjoy and experience the riches and varieties offered by their environment. People's participation in the dialogue on the urban is therefore playing a crucial role in determining how their future is shaped. The appropriation of urban heritage by local communities is dependent on their capacity to engage with and benefit from urban regeneration. Practice of collaboration leads to the better management of urban sites and in turn a greater sense of ownership. With these objectives, the urban dialogue is imagined to be a place for discussion and debate on various issues related to urbanism within India and contributing to the global narratives. 5 institutions imparting master's course from Mumbai and Pune are participating in this exhibition by presenting thesis research work of recently graduated students, serving as a medium of reflection. Today we have gathered here midst of a pandemic where these conversations have become even more imperative. Using master's thesis in urban design and urban conservation as a starting point of engagement via this first time online exhibition, which is an annual event in KRVIA calendar, the main aim is to engage in urban dialogue with the professionals, students, and fresh graduates to offer new perspectives in relation to ongoing discourse on the future of our cities. On behalf of KRVIA, I extend a warm welcome to our panelists and authors, Sergio Porta, Ombretta Romis, and Alessandra Felicity for inaugurating the exhibition, the academicians and participants from various schools, Rizvi College of Architecture, Pillai College of Architecture, Dr. D.Y. Patil College of Architecture, PVP College of Architecture, and Kamla Rehja Vidyanidhi Institute, and all other guests. Let me now invite my colleague, Dr. Binti Singh, to introduce our esteemed authors and panelists. Over to you, Binti.
Thank you, Sanaya. I will quickly introduce our authors. Professor Sergio Porta is an architect and PhD in urban planning, is professor of urban design, director of Urban Design Studies Unit, and co-director of Strathclyde Centre of Urban Policy, Planning and Technology at University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, UK. He is president of Cultural Association Building Beauty, founder and academic director of Building Beauty, council member of International Seminar of Urban Form. He is external examiner at the University of Cardiff, Manchester, and Westminster in London. He is advisor to international organizations and sits on the editorial boards of leading international journals in urban science and design, and is invited speaker to international conferences. His research is on master planning, the sustainable and resilient cities, urban morphology and morphometrics, and radical community-based design. He has published over 60 papers on international peer-reviewed journals and 2 monographs. His latest book, published by the RIBA in 2020, is titled Master Planning for Change, Designing the Resilient City. Professor Ombretta Romis is an architect with a PhD in urban design and a postdoctorate in housing and neighborhood regeneration, funded by the European Union in 2003. She is senior lecturer in the Department of Architecture, University of Strathclyde, associate member of the Royal Town Planning Institute, and fellow of the Higher Education Academy. She teaches, researches, and is advisor to external organizations in the areas of sustainable urban design, spatial planning, urban morphology, environmental psychology, and user participation in design. She has been external examiner at the University of Cardiff, UCL London, ECA, University of Wales, and Prince's Foundation for Building Community. She has been an author of several international publications and monographs. She has been keynote in Brazil, South Korea, China, Finland, South Africa, Italy, and has been on the editorial board of several international journals. She was president of the International Association for People Environmental Studies in 2008 and 12, and served on the board of the Association of European Schools for Planning. Dr. Alexandra Feliciotti is lecturer in urban design at the Department of Architecture, University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. She holds a PhD at the University of Strathclyde on the key themes of urban design and resilience assessment in the built environment. Alexandra is executive member of the Urban Resilience Research Network and chief organizer of the 28th ISUF, that is the International Seminar on Urban Form conference to be held in Glasgow in June 2021. She is also urban designer and data scientist at Mind Earth, an international company working in the fields of earth observation, machine learning, and crowdsourced cartography on projects commissioned by key global players, including the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Committee of the Red Cross. Now, coming to their book, Master Planning for Change, Designing the Resilient City. I have done this before. I have already discussed their book and moderated a book launch event held last year at the International Seminar of Urban Form. So the book is actually an attempt to resolve the paradox of design and change, plan less to plan better, what not to design, and design that counts are some of the phrases that the authors have very intelligently used in this book, and that kind of captures the essence of the book. Much of the argument is around the dialectical relationship between unity and diversity, design and change, slow and fast change, control and informal participation. The authors also argue that master plan is still the primary tool of the designer and therefore very important. You have also maintained that the master plan is no longer an act of creation of final forms, but one of creation of conditions for informal participative practices to thrive once the designers have left. And this is what you term as adaptive design. So over to you, authors, to take us through this beautiful journey, the trajectory of how you started, and the key ideas that you have researched and gifted us in the form of this book, Master Planning for Change. Thank you very much.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Let me try to share the presentation. One moment. Could you please confirm that you are seeing the presentation correctly on your screens?
Sergio, we're looking at the presenter view.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, thank you very much. Can I get started?
No, sorry, we're not looking at the full screen. We're looking at your presenter view of the notes.
Okay. So let me try to go back to. So I'm not sure at this point which of these things should I actually. Let me see. So let me try to understand. I shall first launch the presenter's view and then connect it via the share screen. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Okay, let me try to do so then. So what can you see now?
Still the same screen with your notes. I think you'll have to select the other thumbnail. There must be two thumbnails when you click on share, right?
Okay. So I see one thumbnail which is named, let me see. Sorry for that, we never rehearse enough. That
happens all the time.
All the times, absolutely. Okay. Right, I got a PowerPoint presenter's view thumbnail. Is that the one I should select? Because that's the one I have selected so far. Oh, or I could have slideshow. Yeah, this is maybe the one I should select. Let's try this out.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. 1 second. There we go. So sorry for this technical inconvenience. It happens all the times. I'm Sergio Porta, and thank you, Binti, very much for your very kind introduction. So let's first and foremost thank you with all our heart, all of you, for the privilege of being here today, which is a big day for all of us. So thank you, Professor Palmar, Krvia director, and Professor Paul, former director, and good friends. We are most grateful and honored of having been given the opportunity to present our book to such a respectable audience in such a remarkable day. And this presentation will follow the articulation of the book itself, which Binti has spoiled completely, because Binti, you have said all we had to say. Thank you very much for that. Anyway, it was brilliant. And so we are following the first part that has to do with the urgency that we felt at one point after many years of work together to gather everything in one book. This has to do with what Binti was saying. It has to do with change in the urban form, what it is and how it works and how it relates to design on one side and to sustainability and resilience on the other side. This first part is mostly conceptual, and so is in the book, and lays the theoretical foundations on which the second part is based. The second part, on the contrary, is mostly practical. It is a field guide, as we used to call it, all the way through the master planning process, step by step. This part shows how the foundations can find a translation into practice, hopefully, for professionals, students, and stakeholders in general, and has to do with design. And so let me start with the first part, which has to do again with the urgency to write this book. And I will start from an event I was attending a couple of years ago in Amsterdam, which was the World Architectural Forum, a big event in which Andrew Woolley of Grimshaw Architects delivered a keynote speech in which he highlighted that, number one, resolving the climate crisis is a challenge of historical magnitude, and he compared that to landing on the moon. And on the other side, he said, the way to get there, to get to this moon, so going past the climate crisis, is to have zero emission buildings being the construction standard by 2030. The target is, in his own words, to increase the number of high performance, low carbon buildings by 6-fold from the current trend to reach that milestone. Near zero energy, zero emission buildings must become the construction standard globally by 2030. There was a simplification there in the statement that I found very interesting at many levels. In fact, that in order to have a zero carbon urban future, all what we need doing is making zero carbon buildings. Well, it sounded a bit mechanistic, a bit a mechanistic idea. Moreover, it is one that looks at one scale only, the building scale. And yet, urban designers are confronted by everyday practice with the fact that even though one perfectly zero carbon building seems undoubtedly a good idea, sustainable, a thousand perfectly zero carbon buildings may well make for a completely car-dependent, spatially segregated urban district, which is not sustainable. And likewise, a million such perfectly zero-carbon buildings would make for a perfectly unsustainable city. In other words, we work as urban designers or urbanists, even conservationists, of course, and architects. We work, or we should work, with the simple fact that in a city, there is much more than the summation of this building. That a city is something inherently, essentially different from the summation of its buildings. And that if we don't dig into that difference once and for all, we'll never understand what sustainability really is and how it works in cities, because we'll never understand what cities really are. This really is what we have to do with every day as urban designers, isn't it? The urban form is complex, very complex, possibly the most complex realization of human culture ever. And yet, when we started to look at urban form in that light, and we focus on how urban form changes in time, how it does adapt to circumstances and pressures of all sorts along the way, we did not find that much. We realized that in nearly all literature on urban adaptivity and resilience, which has to do with change, invariably, what is explored is not urban form system by itself, but mostly natural, social, economic, or even cultural systems that happen to occur in cities, which is pretty different. In other words, the physical, tangible fact of the built-up space, which cities are made of, is treated as an essentially inert substrate, a grey, immutable background over which change occurs in economies and societies and all the rest of urban life. However, in all evidence, urban form does change all the time. It does so continuously and in ways that are very similar to those exhibited by all other complex adaptive systems that we know of. So at one point, we got convinced that we could look at change in urban form on the ground of what had been already understood of change in complex adaptive systems in general. So the urban form is kind of a subset, a subclass of complex adaptive systems in general, part of them. In disciplinary terms, that meant bridging urban morphology and system ecology. And when we started doing that, we found loads of unexpected common ground in the two camps. We found a gold mine, or we felt that we found a gold mine. In essence, at each scale, as you can see on the screen right now, urban form elements change following adaptive cycles that roughly go through 4 phases, from exploitation to conservation, release, and reorganization, or, in fact, disintegration of the systems altogether. But across scales, all those materials change through the struggle between forces of innovation, which were called the revolt in system ecology, which come from the bottom up, and forces of conservation, which are called remember, that come from the top down. Hence, when we experience the city, what we actually experience is an instant shot of urban form materials, which at each scale, at any given moment, are at different points in their cycles of change. What are such scales then in urban form? What is urban form in practice at those scales? Well, in urban morphology, we recognize 6 such scales: district, sanctuary area, street, block, street edge, plot. There are other taxonomies as well in urban morphology, but this is ours, and they are pretty similar to each other. And anything that happens at any such scales profoundly influences what happens at any other scale through the interplay of these incredibly subtle, constantly changing mechanisms of innovation and conservation, all the times struggling to prevail or heading to retreat. And it is in this very vulnerable balance between remember and revolt, unity and diversity, that beauty emerges in cities. Here is the golden drop. The magic of urban form is there. Here, for example, we can see 2 scales simultaneously at work in Barcelona, with enduring road structure, rather boring at first sight from the top, giving actually birth to the incredible diversity of rapidly changing individual projects that we experience at eye level or a bird's eye view. In a nutshell, we see a structure which is large scale, very slow to change, which was designed, in fact, acting as a trellis, so to speak, over which organic development happens that is much smaller in scale, much faster to change, and was not designed at all by anyone. It actually grew against Serdar's grand plan designed in 1853. And here we start seeing also the answer to the most uncomfortable question. If we are to find our own position as designers in the game of urban change, it is imperative to identify what we can design and what, in fact, we must carefully not design. Evolution is technically the co-presence of diversity and unity. Urban planning and design have always been about controlling and prefiguring the future. On the contrary, if we look at what beautiful places teach us in current cities, we find a co-presence invariably of a minimal amount of design that establishes a good spatial structure, what we call the trellis, and a large amount of untold, which is left to people, families, and small and medium organizations to develop and grow in time. As such, designers should refrain, not task themselves really, with generating beauty, which would be a creationist approach, from their own drawing boards, but rather with generating the spatial conditions for beauty to emerge by itself, so to speak, in time, which is an evolutionary approach. In order to design for change rather than against it, the first objective is to understand what is it in urban form that belongs to the structure that we can design, and what doesn't, that we must carefully avoid to design. And here I will pass it over to Alessandra Nombretta to show the second part of the presentation and the book, which is about how in master planning for change we have gone through this question. And we have done that in practice over the whole of the master planning cycle. The floor is yours, guys.
Umberta, we can't hear you.
We can hear you.
I was just waiting for Umberta to start.
Umberta, could you please check if you're on mute?
Each of us should have some technical problems to be a.
We got to have our dose every day, don't we?
Exactly. I'm not sure.
Do you see Umberta at all in the meeting?
Yes, I see her.
Okay.
I see that she's still on mute. Perhaps she can.
I think she has to unmute herself.
Yeah, you are still on mute, Umberta. Well,
We heard her. Briefly, very briefly.
excuse me? Sorry?
I said we did hear her very briefly. Yeah. She's saying I'm not unmuted. That's what she's saying.
So Umberta, I think you can unmute yourself on the top of the screen, right, top right.
Binti, the icon shows that she's still on mute.
Yeah, she
yeah, Ankush, maybe from the central system, is it controlled from the central thing?
No, I can't unmute her from here. She'll have to unmute herself.
Okay. Okay. Let me just write to her.
Yeah. Binti, I suggest that she leaves and joins the meeting again. That may help.
Okay, so Umberto is saying that in her chat she doesn't look, she cannot see that she's muted.
Okay.
That she can see that she unmuted herself, but she still cannot speak. Maybe Umberto, if you have headphones, if you try to remove them or something, I don't know. Or if you want, I can.
Yeah, we can keep going ourselves. This is all communal work, so.
Yes, I suggest we can keep going, and until the issue is resolved, we can keep going. So, Sergio, please continue. I think Alexandro can continue.
Alessandro, you want to take the lead, or do you want me to do that?
No, yes, that's fine. So,
okay.
What Umberto was going to present is essentially our research team, and just to give you a little bit of an introduction of what is that as the, I'm not sure what noise this is, but of course, 1 second, excuse me. Okay, sorry. So as this book is not just the work of the authors of this book, but it's essentially a work that comes from an entire research unit that through a lot of strains of research has developed some areas of investigation which really feed into the work that is presented in the book. And our research group, the Urban Design Studies Unit, has been made and is made by many researchers with different interests and addressing 3 main research areas. So on one hand, we look at the form of cities, at how they look, how they're shaped. We look at aspects of the behavior, how they change over time, how people, through constant interaction at different levels, are part of this change and this transformation. And finally, how can we learn from form and behavior to understand how to design cities, how to approach their design. And we do this by looking at different aspects of how they work. So we look at similarities between cases across the world. We look at the consequence of transformations that happen in urban form and how these reverberate across different social, economic, and environmental domains. We focus on the impact that design decisions and transformations have on the quality of life of people in cities. We look at how cities can be made more walkable, how can we work to provide service accessibility to all and improve the equity of cities. And also we try and work in terms of understanding what makes them resilient through a variety of transformations. Sergio, can you just skip? Okay. For example, when we look at form, we compare how different cities across the world are structured, and we uncovered rules that tend to be to present themselves across space, and they really talk about how we as a collective human society conceive the way we move and the way we interact with the environment. We have, for example, found how before the automobile took over, let's say, the network that was forming the street system was very much a tighter network, where the main street, the main attractor of urban lives, were very close to each other, and following more or less a rule that we came to define 400-meter rule, that is the rule of accessibility, of a 5-minute walk from any destination to make you able to fulfill your daily needs. Sergio, can you? Yeah. And we found, as we were saying before, that this type of pattern is one that was present all across the world before the advent of the automobile age. And in many cities in present day, especially in the context of informal settlement, where accessibility, place-based accessibility is again, also by necessity, an aspect that it's again present as returned. But let's just focus on how we've been designing cities over the last 100 years, giving so much space to cars that the local accessibility of an urban main street has doubled, and even more than doubled as the advent of car came through, and has not recovered yet, even in the most recent developments that we call sustainable. Sergio?
Yeah, interestingly, though, the informal settlements go back to the pre-automobile rule, as you can see in the lower chart.
Yes. We also try and understand what are the patterns that help make up or define the characters of places across the world. We found how just by focusing on 6 crucial characters, we can understand what, in spatial terms, makes the unique distinctiveness of specific spatial patterns. We have, for example, studied these patterns in terms of the 6 patterns in cities of very different historic origins, from historical town to new towns, industrial cities, and peripheral sprawl. And we found that they substantially differ. Sergio, can you? Yes. We also try to understand how the form of places impacts on the life of people. For example, we study one aspect of the network of street that is called centrality. And it's a complex concept. We can summarize it by saying that essentially it describes the relative importance of each element of each street in a city with respect to its context. So in this diagram, for example, we see that streets that are in red have a very high value in terms of accessibility and strategic role within the city, compared to streets that are, let's say, in blue, that tend to have a secondary role. And we found how the configuration of the network that makes up a city, so the streets and their intersection pattern, impacts aspects such as location of services, whereas services and activities that tend to be more successful tend to be located on street with high centrality value because they are a attractor of people and movement. And we also use this as a guidance tool in our design, because we can understand whether a new development or an existing development has an opportunity or has a potential to host a variety of activities based on the potential that comes directly from the network of street. Sergio, can you? We have also studied patterns of walkability, and again understood what types of urban form are most likely to support people interaction in public space and their presence. And also we have looked at different types of patterns and how this links to gentrification in the urban environment. Also understanding what types of form tend to have this pattern of increased profitability in terms of, market as well. Sergio? We have also looked at how the urban form, in which ways the urban form can support the resilience of an urban environment. And in this sense, we have specifically focused on the aspect of urban form as something that can improve the potential of an area to support positive change and to adapt over time. We have done so by looking at different cities, but we are also, and in this particular example, we have looked at the same area, going through development over a number of years, and saw how urban form drastically impacts, or the pattern of urban form drastically impacts the spatial resilience of a place in baseline terms. Sergio? All of this research and all of the theory that Sergio explained before, they are the building blocks, really, the drivers of our method for master planning, the one that we present in the book. And again, in this book, we are aiming at creating master plans, which is our, traditional, let's say, a very well-known word in urban design, but of different kind that keep the evolutionary aspect in present. And again, as Sergio was saying before, a type of evolutionary design that work at the same time with the concept of unity and coherence, and also of change, meaning that there are some things that should not be designed and should be left to the self-organization of the system. In our approach, we focus on ordinary fabric, and we are not so much concerned about architectural language or style, but we rather focus on and invite to focus on the structure of place and of urban form. All this method again, yeah.
Oh, nothing.
Yes.
I was just checking if.
Yeah. Now I think now I can give the floor to you. We have done this little switch.
Okay.
So again, this method that Umbretta will present in the next few slides is really something that we like to think that learns from the wisdom of places that work through time, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel every single time. But Umbretta, I'll leave the floor to you.
Thanks. This is at least is a proof that we are a good team that manages to work on the spot. So I don't know if you hear me well, but anyway, here I am. Hello, everybody, and thanks and sorry for the little mishap before. So a beautiful story of or the story of our unit and our ideas and pieces of research. And much of this work has been done on the ground. So a lot of it has been action research in the sense that we have tested these ideas with students, but also on commissions from practice from local authorities to make sure that actually what we were considering did have a meaning and did have a sense. So all the work has then been inputted into this book, The Master Planning for Change, and we'll take you very, very quickly through it because, as Sergio and Alessandra said, there's a very practical part that builds on a very conceptual part. So, Sergio, do you want to move on?
Yes.
Thank you. The practical part of the book is taking students, practitioners, but also community groups through the process of generating ideas for the sensible development of redevelopment of their area. And we have organized it in steps which we think are very important and all essential, and most importantly, they build on top of each other. They build from each other. Especially the analytical part, we are completely open to a range of alternative practices. We are not saying that our approach is the only one to be adopted, but we give a range of ideas on how to do so. Whereas for what concerns the strategy, framework, and the master plan, so taking what we learn about a place onto, so describing the place and turning it into normative actions, that part we think it's a little bit more important, it should be a little bit more specific and precise. So we're gonna take you through just showing you a few images of each of these steps so you get a sense of how everything that has been said until now works. So the first thing that we consider very important is to really explore and understand the place on which we want to act, as we've never done before. Students of architecture, and very often in practice as well, the act of observing and learning and mapping an area is perhaps not considered as important as it should be. And we think it is the fundamental starting point of acting on any area, on any place. And so we do conduct really thorough analysis of urban form in terms of typologies, in terms of subdivision of land uses, land units, accesses. So not an understanding of the form, but also of how the form is used, is misused, is managed by the people that live in it or work or pass through it. Next, please. We then look at we ask to understand the historical evolution of the place. Sergio talked a lot about evolution, and evolution is fundamental because our principle is that what has remained through time and is still there has a good reason for doing so. It means that it worked. It means that it made sense. So we want to really intimately discover how urban form has changed and what impact these changes had on users and people, on meanings and values. Next, please. Not only we want to understand the formal changes and transformation in place, but also the imaginary transformation of the people that live and experience the place. So we collect stories to understand really how the significance of places changed, because our fundamental belief is that the city belongs to everybody, and therefore is everybody's point of view that should be collated. Next, please. We then do much more practical and tangible investigations. So we look at, we suggest to look at planning frameworks and any economic profile, any social profile, and try to overlay these with physical profiles. So we're starting weaving all the layers of the city together. And importantly, each of these steps in analysis is used. We never forget anything that, and we should never forget anything that is done in the exploratory phase of design. Everything has to matter. Everything has to be brought through. Next, please. And I think we can move on to the next slides as well. We do objective analysis, but also a more subjective analysis. Remember, the cities fundamentally is the product of the actions of millions of people through time. So we need to understand how the form, how the economy of a place functions in the mind of the people that use it. So we use traditional methods, we use more innovative methods that we keep on exploring, and we have explored and collated over many years. So we combine them all, and the book gives recommendations and ideas. Next, please. Mentioned the form of the city is for us a very important and fundamental. You guessed that by now. We really like the design of places. So we want to understand how the 6 elements that Sergio mentioned before, how they appear in different combinations, in different types of urban form. So for us, measurement becomes really fundamental. It's important. We want to compare measurement, and we want to see what implications different forms have on economy, on movement, on accessibility. And so we do combine very social, very light aspects with very informal aspect, very formal aspect. We always try and bring everything together. So through the journey of the book, you really see how each of these information helps build, next please, the stepping stones for the more active part. And Alessandra has mentioned that one of our more concrete analysis is the study of the potential of place done through the street centrality assessment. So again, it's another layer. It's a city is made of layers, and the analysis is also made of layers. Next, please. So at this point, having collated all this information, which we want to retain, we don't want to leave on the side, we start weaving them, as mentioned, together into strategic visions. We always think long term, and we try and determine, establish, put in place an infrastructure, what has to be planned and what should be planned, on top of which everything else, so the users can start filling the gaps. So the trellis that Sergio mentioned is now starting to grow, and it starting to support everything else. So a first step into design for us is a strategic step, which is very conceptual. So next slide, please.
Just have a few minutes on that.
Okay, then move on. So this is very conceptual, but that really aims to try and use all that information into an analysis of the place, into a rectification of the place towards the resilience ideal that Alessandro and Sergio have mentioned, towards the sustainability idea that we mentioned, but all quantified. Next, please. And Sergio, from now on, you can really go, maybe give me 10 seconds per slides and we can just carry on. Okay. So we go from very general, conceptual to very practical. Now we want to design the form of places. We design the city in a way that responds to structure. So we plan by streets and we combine streets of different importance with densities of various degrees, with form, with precise form. For us, the unit of development is a very complex one that links all the scales from the district to the plot, to the building typology. So all the scales keep on being linked. You see here how it's a very conceptual idea. We move on to more concrete ideas, and then we go and look at precedents. We go and look in great detail at examples from history, from the history of our city, to understand how different typologies have been interpreted in time, to understand the most appropriate one and the ones that have managed to remain and resist through time and still maintain functionality. Next, please. And so we move on and we apply all the study of similarities, the study of permanence through time. We try and apply into our master plans, which, if you look here, they really look like very normal, very almost historic master plan, except they're not, because they use and import typology, spaces, and contemporary and modern infrastructure together in a way which is very much in line with a city that can grow and change in time without really creating too much upheaval. We like measurements, and so the way to calibrate the strategic scale to the very small scale is really one of understanding examples and understanding a big range of local characters and try and turn them into something new. So our new master plans are infill or new developments, but that are very much in synchrony with everything else around. And so this is how the story ends. Of course, within a master plan, which is really a big description of what could be, is not a final blueprint by any means. There's a great variety that is allowed in here, and this is why this is why we attach to the big overall structure of a place, we attach what we call passports, which are interpretations of what could happen when circumstances change slightly over time through the time in which the master plans are applied, which is spread in 10, 15, 20 years time, 30 years time. So we want to guarantee the possibility of amending certain conditions when the situation changes. So we talk about structure and we talk about trellis. So a fundamental design and plan structure, but everything else can be changed and can be amended through time. So we leave a lot of variety. Alessandra said we're not interested in architectural style. Absolutely not. Fundamentally for us, if the structure of a place is correct, it can invite any architectural style possible and still create beautiful places. Buildings will change in time, but the structure will remain in time. So we need to understand how to allow these transformations. Alessandra, do you want to conclude at this point, since we are swapping around?
Okay. So, I mean, with this book, we really want, and with our method, which is also what we teach our students at the Master in Urban Design at our University of Strathclyde, we really we have essentially some preposition that we really want our student and future urban designers and architects to stick with. And one is really to look at places and over time, not just as if they were always going to be like our designs, imagine, because places are constantly undergoing processes of adaptation and diversification that they always worked in the past, and they gave us the city that we see now, and they always will work in the future, even against our best interests or wishes as architects and designers. And so our urban design approach should really be based on an understanding of the product, process, adaptation trilogy, these three concepts that should always happen at the same time, should always be considered at the same time. And really they come from an understanding of a city as a resilient system, that it's incredibly complex and cannot be managed at whole by any one individual project. So we our design, our master plans are not so much master plan for special parts of the cities, for unique buildings or for unique structure. They really aim at focusing on what is ordinary, on the 95% of the buildings that they are just too natural, that you don't even imagine, that they've always been there. And then we provide space for the exceptional within the master plan. So the master plan also allows for exceptional creations that break the rules, break the ordinary fabric at specific points where it matters the most. And as I think as final invite, that our book really tries to give to all our readers, but also that we hope for all the urban designers of the future to take, as a suggestion, is to really know what to design and be very ponderate, very considerate about the decision made, but also be very honest on what should not be designed and what should be left to people. And sometimes not trying to micromanage the design project and really try to code places rather than designing them up to the very smallest architectural detail. And I think with this last set of, let's say, points, this is us, this is the work, the book that we wrote, and we really hope that you find this presentation thought-provoking. And if you have questions, we are very happy to take any.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, authors. That was a great summarization of your ideas, and I would like to urge all who are present here to go through the actual book, and both the part 1 and the part 2. We do have some questions from the audience. We'll take up. Let's see. Yes. As they type in their questions, I think they will take time to kind of process all the information that has been shared, the fundamental ideas of your book. I would like to raise one question from my side, which is when you mentioned, picking up from Alexandra's point, that cities work best when they offer anonymity and publicness. And you allude to recent work on transitional edges as socio-spatial components of urban form. that could be a starting point to offer important knowledge on how strongly people associate with them. Can you give us some more examples and tell us how this could be an important area of research?
Who shall go with this?
Anyone?
I don't know.
Alexandra can take it up if you want to.
Yep. So you've been talking about research on transitional edges, and it's quite an interesting topic because for us, the street edge, so the element that relates the individual plots and the individual property to the public space, is of crucial importance because that is where the most important types of interaction between the built infrastructure and the open space occur. And this edge, it's too simplistic to say that this edge should always be open, full of interaction, because again the city is full of nuances, and we really take this aspect very, very much in consideration in this book. In part because we know for research, but for experience as well in the city, that certain types of activities that occur in space requires greater transparency and greater immediacy in the relationship between public and private space. But others really much cherish privacy and reflection. So again, in a good design project, this awareness of the transition between the different level of privacy and publicness, the different level of transparencies, should always be embedded. And again, this is not something that happens at random, but it's strongly related to the importance of the street that we are talking about. Streets that are, centers of attraction require a greater transparency and interaction between transitional edges, transitional edges. Whereas if we look at what we call the sanctuary area, so the more secluded core of an area where we have generally streets that are less important in terms of movement, but that they require like a slower and a more quiet approach, then identifying the right type of edge is really part of that quality, that nuanced quality that diversifies cities.
Okay.
Can I add a couple of words on this?
Yes.
Yes,
please.
Transitional edges is a beautiful term that our very good colleague in Sheffield has been working on for many years, Kevin Thwaites. He's a landscape architect, and he comes to it from a landscape architecture, but also from a very psychological point of view. And it is a concept that is really fundamental in the history of cities. The transitional edge as a concept has changed tremendously over the past 150 years. And the transitional edge, which is the transition between the private and the public, is really the element in which, sorry, a dog has just entered. It is really the element that has marked how life in the house and in the public has evolved through time. So the location of the entrance, the location of the bathroom, the location of any communal activity has really been marked and embodied by how this threshold has changed and evolved in time. And this is why it's so fundamental for us to understand it and to use it, and to understand that it should be used as a design tool. And Alessandra has mentioned the link between the transitional edge and the street. This is an art that we have completely lost in city design, and we treat it simply as a wall. We don't give it that rich sociality that it should have. And this is an incredible sad story of how our cities have lost progressively their character. And this is why it's so important that we rediscover it, we understand it. The best way to understand it is to do so from research of evolution and changes and forms in time.
Thank you, Ambretta, and thank you, Alexandra. We do have 2 questions. I'm going to leave it open to all of you, all the 3 of you. So this is from Shalini Prakash. my dear friend, urban designer based in Delhi, and she writes, how important does the author feel, do the authors feel about flexibility in master planning could allow future growth and resilience? I could repeat that. Okay. How important do the authors feel about the fact that flexibility in master planning could allow future growth and resilience? That is question number one. And the second is also from my dear friend Mathai, who is a professor at a management school. And I'm glad that he's here and shooting this question to you. In India, we do not have a strong urban planning, but cities grow bottom up. Does your model allow for an emergent approach to urban modeling? So both these questions open to all of you.
Yeah, they are very much related, aren't they? So I would reply, trying to be as short as possible. Yes, we believe that flexibility is absolutely important in having in making sure that cities actually work, and that life is poured into the urban dynamic. Without flexibility, which is actually what we see in many places, especially built up after the Second World War in the west of the world, of course. I take it actually in India, this is becoming sort of starting, I wouldn't say now, but it is becoming more important. It has started to become more important in the 80s, 90s. But in the West, yes, after the Second World War, there was a big change in that respect. So planning system became much more strict, stringent, and probably overruling the urban game. The effect of that, we can see it very clearly. If places don't change, they just die. There's no alternative to that. Now, this sounds a bit ideological, and maybe it is. However, if we look around ourselves, we see that in many cases, some of the places that we would deem to be the most, spontaneous in the way they grew across centuries, etc., most of them, they actually started by being designed very strictly. For example, most of the historical centers in Europe have grown out of military camps, designed and built in a very rigid way in the ancient Roman times. I can mention most of the Italian cities, for example, from Turin to Bologna, it's plenty. And same in all the areas of the Roman Empire, back to 2,000 years ago, colonized. Most of the cities were laid out as military camps. We go there now, and we don't acknowledge that, because in time, the change that has happened over that trellis is astonishing. So we have to be very careful at the same time not to be too ideological here. Beauty, let me use this word, beauty is something that emerges in the middle area between planning and unplanning. You see, you need both of them. You need a structure over which gives a certain kind of order, over which everything can happen without ending up into chaos. We have seen this over and over and over again. What has happened in the last few decades, in the nearly a century now, in the West, is that one element of this combination has taken over the others. So it's not a matter of planning or anti-planning agenda. That's not our point. We are not anti-planning or anti-design, but we need to be conscious that design can't take it all. That design has to be conscious. Design has to be for change, not against it. We are not sculptors, we are not painters. There's a fundamental difference in being a sculptor or a painter and being an architect. And this fundamental, or even more so, an urban designer or a planner. Okay, so this is very, very important, and sometimes it goes lost because for a number of historical reasons. For example, for the reason that in most cases the main profession of design, which is architecture, has been reframed in the 20s and 30s as a branch of the visual arts. So in most cases, designers feel themselves as those who are in charge of providing a final and definitive form to places. And this would actually, not understand fully the real nature of our of the matter we have in our hands, which is different from, again, from paintings, because people live in there, and when people live in places, people change those places. There's no escape from that. If people don't change those places, they die. Places die. So the whole book is about this, balance, this subtle, very subtle equilibrium between the opposite, change and permanency, if you like, permanence.
If I can say something about the second part of the question about what, okay, for example, our students learn about master planning for change in a context, in the UK planning system, that it's a very highly regulated system. And of course, I think when moved to other contexts where planning systems are different, as well as maybe not as overbearing as the British one, I think that the key is understanding again how does this limit of what should be designed and what should be left go? So how to shift it from across levels. We were reading about work by Shlomo Angel, and he was proposing that in context of very heightened growth, but for example, limited capacity to enforce strong regulations onto the individuals, as would be more simple or more customary to do in the UK, although the UK is not growing nearly as fast, would be to just provide a looser infrastructure and a looser set of basic fundamental services, onto which then impose some loose rules that people can just start implementing themselves. So without having, the traditional idea of the architect drawing the doorknob and, the street network. And I think it's just understanding where this fine line really needs to be moved, and when and what it's enough, what it's within the limit of what is feasible, and what doesn't result into chaos, but at the same time doesn't destroy the capacity of local people to make the change for themselves.
Okay, thank you so much. This is a question from Anand. He's our dear colleague from SPA Bhopal. And he writes, thank you for your wonderful insights to the book, very interesting viewpoints. Can you throw some more light on what you mean by ordinary?
Yeah, I may take this if I...
Is it on the similar lines of Hebrukans?
Yeah. In fact, it is definitely. I mean, we deem ourselves as being, to some extent, disciples of John A. Bacon, and we met him a few times, and he's a good friend. I think what is ordinary? This is essential. So, of course, we can engage into the definition of what ordinary is in many different ways. We tried in the book to be very specific about that, and we try in the book to be very specific about what is ordinary urban form, what are the elements of urban form which we could think as ordinary. So actually, in the process of master planning, we normally distinguish specialist places from ordinary places. And the specialist places are meant to be those which are which have a consistent and substantial non-residential land use component, and they are also big. They are also big. So big in terms of the land use is big. It's not just one building. It's probably not just one building in the premises. It's not even a bunch of buildings, but it is something bigger than that. So that makes a sort of specialist, a specialist area, well, as we call it, which is ruled and approached in a completely different way from the way we would approach in the master planning process the ordinary places, which goes through regulations, it goes through understanding of the precedents, it goes through a number of other things. So yes, we love the ordinary city, we have to say. We love it immensely, and we have spent most of our energies and time to try to understand how that works, because this is what has been lost mostly recently, for a number of reasons. Some are cultural, some are financial, some are organizational. The emphasis is most often placed to making things which are extraordinary. And by doing that, we miss the point that a collection of extraordinary things, without any structure on which to find an order, generate chaos. And in fact, chaos is what we see, which is very different from diversity or variety, extremely different. Chaos means that every place looks similar to every other by chasing up all the opportunities to distinguish yourself. At the end, nobody distinguishes from anybody else because everybody try to shout and try to stand out. Being bold, that's fine. But again, it is a matter of balance. You need both. You need things that stand out within, on the ground of a canvas that keeps everything together. If you miss the canvas, spaces and places just don't go together. They just don't work.
When we work with our students, but also when we talk with practice, is interesting because the impression is that when we mention the word rules, which are the rules that we use to design the ordinary city, people expect that we want to impose a certain outcome and a certain form, and actually it's really the opposite. It's only because you have certain rules of how the components of the ordinary fabric comes together and has come together and can change as they give meaning and identity to the city, so that you can create places that are unique. A city with no rules doesn't have the comfort that the ordinary gives, nor the excitement that the specialty grants. So a city with no rules is a dull city. It sounds strange to be saying this, but it's actually the character of the places that we love the most. So we always think that is the fundamental task of urban design is really to balance the ordinary and the specials, to learn how to apply the rules so that you can break them in a way which will make the city a better place.
It's all over the place. So it's just a matter of being aware and learn from what you can see and what we can see working throughout history, all over to our times.
But the problem is that this is often not what is taught, and this is often not what is practiced. So it's an art that really has to be rediscovered. And this is why a lot of the work that we've been talking about is based on observation, on trying to understand what makes places similar rather than what sets them apart. And this is something that doesn't strike as immediately appealing, perhaps, to certain disciplines, but it is fundamental when you talk about cities.
If I can just say something really quick, and Sergio Porta. So I wrote the book with Sergio. It was one of the test subjects of the method because I was also a student at the Master of Urban Design, and so I tested firsthand all this to create my own masterclass. So I was coming from a university in Italy that is very much about the big masters of architecture, and you would learn from what they did and their fantastic examples, and then you would just try to come up with your own revolutionary way of designing something. Like you were the first person to have to get it right. And I remember one of the first lectures that I had in Glasgow, and Sergio and Umberto were saying, if you draw a public toilet with the same degree of originality that you use to draw a museum, that you don't understand what language is for. And the idea that there are some things that you should really aim to not make stand out. It's really really thought-provoking. The idea that you don't have to come up with every creative bit of the city. You just have to give enough structure so that both the ordinary and what is extraordinary can coexist. And then the extraordinary can be extravagant, can be incredible, but still has to be the exception that the exception to something that it's essentially what makes the character of the city. Because even Venice, where I studied, the character of Venice doesn't come from San Marco Square alone. It doesn't come from Rialto Bridge. It comes from all the thousands of beautiful buildings that no one can just say, okay, I actually remember each of them specifically, but they make the fabric of Venice. And I think that it's really a very beautiful thing to, and also it's kind of humbling because it makes you realize that you're just a piece in this bigger thing. It's not about
Thank you, Binti. And thank you to our panelists. That was a great presentation. I'll now invite Professor Sergio Porta to open the exhibition, Urban Dialogue 2021, and share his thought with us regarding the exhibited work.
All right. Thank you very much. It's very interesting. We were brought through the exhibition. We tried to understand in a very short time, or to register, if you like, to record our feelings about it, because in that amount of time it was impossible to do much more than that. So we went through it. First of all, we were pleased.
Try to propose the most considerate forms of development with really grounded strategic visions, where you're trying to give quality, opportunities, and health for all at the time when it's really important. You're learning really the most fundamental lessons in urban design, which we often forget, that the city is for everyone, and that when we plan it, we should make sure that its best traits are for everyone. So this interest that you have shown in visions of quality, of health, was really refreshing for us. We liked the fact that you are teaching students to work at strategic and detailed scales at the same time. And then the analytical work that you've done and how you embedded that in your design ideas really suggests that you're really on a right, successful path to become responsible, considerate designers. I don't know if Sergio and maybe Alessandra want to add something.
Yeah, I got a couple of points, if I may.
Okay.
We still have a bit of time, right? We still have a few minutes, right?
I think we still have 4
minutes.
minutes.
Yeah. All right. So let me touch a couple of points. I'm referring in particular to works I've seen in the third theme, urban fabric, typology, and morphology, and I have to say I was impressed. I was impressed on many levels. First of all, I was impressed by the very sheer fact that there is such amount of work in urban morphology in a course of urban design and conservation. And I understand that these works don't come from KRVIA only. They come from 5 different institutions all over India. And that makes me even more impressed. And you can see the importance of that in the works that are on the walls. Another element I noticed is that there is a great emphasis on informal settlements. And obviously this is understandable in India and in most of Asia, but I would say most of the world. And it is interesting to see that, because more than half of new urban places which will be built from now to the next 30-40 years are going to be informal. Like it or not, it's going to be most of what is going to be built in the next 30-40 years is going to be informal. So that is, and it is going to be mostly in Asia or in Latin America or sub-Saharan Africa to some extent, and mostly in Asia. So understanding informality is not anything, and it is challenging. It is not anything ancillary, right? But anything we could or we couldn't do, or we might be pleased or not to do. This is where we will lose or win, the battle for, a future in this planet. So it is extremely important, and I'm very pleased to see how much attention it is posed on this. Now, if I can flag out one thought that came to me looking at those works, is this: what about the off-grid city debate? There is such debate internationally, which is all about a complete change in the paradigm we are following in addressing informality. So far, we can acknowledge 3 different approaches. One I'm not going to touch upon. This is an old one. We bring a lot of money in informal places and we fix them. We just change them according to our own criteria. This was the old way. And then much more sensitivity has been brought into play, with working with communities, etc., and making value of the local views and the local opportunities and the local energy which is in places, and in order to make the local people more, like shaping their own future, etc. And that has come through in different ways. And then there is this new understanding which starts from just an observation that we will probably be not able to extend the grids, meaning sanitation, electricity, transport, and all these things, extend the grids to cover everything which is at the moment not covered, and everything which is going to be not covered and is going to pop up in the next 30-40 years. You're just not going to have enough money to do so, to have enough, planning system to do so, to have enough resources, political resources, financial resources, natural resources to actually do that. This is not going to happen. So don't we need a sort of a radical approach to that, according to which, rather than seeing the future of informal places as places that will be made formal to some extent, will be reached by the grades, the central grades, the big central grades. And if rather thinking of this as a trajectory of development for informality, shall we not try to start imagining another one in which sanitation, electricity, which is energy, and mobility are managed in different ways. More locally grounded, more based on appropriate technology rather than necessarily advanced technologies. A totally different framework of financing those interventions, and of course a much larger protagonism of local communities. Let me just finish with this little provocation. It would be absolutely outstanding to look at that in India.
All right, thank you so much to all our three panelists. I will now invite Shweta Wagh, Associate Professor, to quickly take us through the exhibition. Shweta?
Thanks, Anaya. Thank you, Sergio, for your comment on the exhibition. Welcome to the Urban Dialogue exhibition. The link to the exhibition can be found on our website. I'm just sharing my screen to take you through the exhibition. Yeah. Is my screen visible?
No.
It's the Teams window that's visible.
Yes, yes. I think it's loading now. Yeah, is the window visible? I think it's still loading.
Yes, Windows. Yes, good.
Okay. Yeah. So I will briefly introduce the structure of the exhibition and take you through the various themes. The projects in the exhibition have been organized under 5 themes, and the panels under each theme are exhibited in a separate room. Let's go to the first room. It's taking some time to load. Is it visible on the screen?
Yes, it is.
Okay. The first theme is titled Placemaking and the Public Realm, and the projects exhibited under this theme aim to strengthen the socio-cultural and aesthetic values of the public realm and are concerned with perceived loss of publicness and in contemporary urbanization processes. I'll just briefly, we are very short of time, so I'm just going to briefly browse through some of the panels in the room. The second theme is titled Local History, Association and Identity. The projects in this section highlight the association between the physical form and intangible values and experiment with the narrative and perceptual method to emphasize the ritual and experiential aspects of daily life. I'm sorry it's taking a while to load, so I don't think I'll be loading all the themes. I'll just take you through some of the panels in this theme.
Shweta, if you can just mention all the 5 themes, and we'll leave it up to the attendees to then go and explore the exhibition on their own.
Yes, I'll do that. So the third theme is Urban Fabric, Typology and Morphology. The projects included in this theme are rooted in the socio-economic and cultural life of urban communities and involve methods of study which foreground existing patterns and practices, employ morphological and typological analysis. The fourth theme is urban density and walkability. The projects exhibited under this theme attempt to reconcile density, with livability and demonstrate how new developments can accommodate shared spaces and services and improve the quality of common amenities. Finally, I'll come to the fifth theme, which is ecological urbanization and sustainability. The projects exhibited under this section explore various dimensions such as disaster mitigation, ecological planning, and techniques and design, flood management, and point towards the potential role of architecture and urban design in climate action. We hope you enjoy going through the exhibition. I would now invite the master students to present their testimonials.
Upanagar Shikshan Mandal's Kamla Raheja Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture and Environmental Studies is a premier architecture school based in Mumbai. The institute started functioning in 1992 by offering 5-year Bachelor of Architecture degree programs. The research endeavors within the city has emphasized on various urban issues, especially housing, informality, marginalization, infrastructure, historicity, and ecology. Endeavors like these subsequently led to the formulation of 2 years Masters of Architecture program in Urban Design and Urban Conservation in the year 2007. KRVIA believes in collaborative work with professionals, scholars from diverse fields, and also with various institutions and universities across the world, facilitating urban research work.
Hi. My curiosity to understand the potential of design thinking and problem solving led me to pursue my masters at Kamla Raheja. The college offers much more than design. It inculcates critical thinking to explore the urban phenomena through multiple perspectives. The course aims at creating a multidisciplinary learning experience through subjects that include sociology, ecology, anthropology, economics, planning, conservation, and more. The time I have spent here has given me the tools for research and the means to implement solutions to help create urban environments for the future.
Hi. At Krvia, I really like how the program design puts together a batch of students from both urban design and conservation, and how we have been encouraged from straight through orientation to working groups for peer learning, especially with colleagues from interdisciplinary fields, has been an additional advantage. It has been a great experience as the faculties have always guided us, encouraged us, and widened our horizons, not only by their own rich experiences, but also by bringing in opportunities, helping us put our boots on the field and learn from industry experts. Thank you.
Hi everyone. It's been my privilege to study the course of Urban Conservation in Krvia. The faculty's constant support and their mentorship has always enabled us to develop a broader perspective towards the field of urban design as well as urban conservation. During the course, we also had the privilege to participate in workshops held by the college with collaboration with internationally renowned organizations such as Ecomos, UNESCO, and many more. The idea of conservation as a generic imagery ain't just about restoring the buildings, but here in this journey, it has allowed us to explore this field of conservation with many new different urban approaches and perspectives towards looking at heritage conservation holistically. Thank you.
Hi. My journey at Krvia has been a very exciting and an enriching one. Starting with research thinking as core to urban pedagogy and design practice. New dimensions of looking at cities as systems and networks along with its spatial aspects have been a very keen part of my learning here. Also, the bachelor's and master's faculties have been very supportive of our endeavors as researchers, and I'm sure that these teachings in Krvia will help me and my colleagues to be better professionals in future. Thank you.
would like to thank Professor Sergio Porta, Dr. Omreta Romis, and Dr. Alessandra Feliciotti for their presentation and on their new book, and also for inaugurating Urban Dialogue Exhibition 2021. I would also like to thank all the organizers of the
Sanaya?
Hello, I think she is Shweta is stuck maybe because of network. So let me just go ahead and thank everybody that's present here.
Hello, I think she. Maybe because of network.
So I would like to thank Sergio Porta, Alessandra, and Omreta for the book launch and sharing the valuable knowledge. To all the attendees who were present, I would also like to thank Rutuka Parulkar, who has been the exhibition coordinator, along with the master's students team, including Himanshu, Gaurish, Siddharth, and Madhura, for putting together the exhibition in such a short time. Thank you everybody for being here. We were to take a short break before the convocation ceremony, but unfortunately, since we are running short of time, we will jump directly into the convocation ceremony. Thank you all. Over to Meenal.
A very good evening to all assembled here. We are gathered here to celebrate our annual event of convocation ceremony of graduating batch of 2020. I am Meenal Yaram Shetty, an assistant professor at KRVI, and I take this opportunity to welcome our chief guest, Mr. Sergio Porta, governing council members, academic council members, our entire team of KRVI, faculties from other colleges and all other participants, and last but not the least, our dear students and their friends and family. It is through their own determination, passion and talent, sheer grueling hard work, which our profession demands, that you are seated here, ready to make a difference in the professional world as well as in the life of the people you will interact with. It is with great pride and pleasure that I congratulate you all on behalf of everyone assembled here. You have overcome many challenges, hardships, obstacles through rigor, vigor, confidence, using your skills and capacities that you have learned in your time with us. A new chapter is opening out for all of you with new possibilities and challenges coming your way, and I'm sure you will accept this and meet them with the same confidence you displayed here. On this day of successfully completing one more chapter of your life and embarking on other, I take this opportunity to congratulate you, each and every one of you, from everyone assembled here. And I wish you your future journey to be equally successful. And definitely I would love to go on, but looking at the time constraint, I would like the ceremony to continue ahead. And without taking much of your time, I would now like to invite Mr. Manoj Parmar, our new director of KRVI, to take on. Over to you, Manoj.
Thanks, Meenal. I take this opportunity to invite members of Upnagar Shikshan Mandal, Sanjeev Mantriji, Chairman of Upnagar Shikshan Mandal, Kabaraji, the Chairman of Governing Council, Kamla Raheja, Vidyanidhi Institute of Architecture and Environmental Studies, Kirtida Mehta, Treasurer of Upnagar Shikshan Mandal, Akshay Raheja, Member of Governing Council, Dr. Satish Modh, Chairman of College Development Committee, Kamla Raheja, Vidyanidhi Institute for Architecture, and Vinayak Damleji, Member and Auditors of Upnagar Shikshan Mandal. I also welcome KRVI faculties, my colleagues from other institutions, definitely KRVI administration, and our chief guest, Professor Sergio Porta, along with Alessandra and Omreta from University of Strathclyde, Glasgow, and finally, all the graduating students and current students from bachelor and postgraduate program. I welcome you. Graduation ceremony is always such a special occasion, culmination of years of work, actualization of self, goals, and various achievements in the process. So it is only fitting that today evening we commemorate the road that we have all traveled together this last 5 years in bachelor and 2 years in postgraduate program. Though I am in a new role as a director today and the dean of postgraduate program in the past, this is perhaps a respectable moment to invite Anirudh Paul to say a few words as he mentored you all as a director for last 5 years in bachelor and 2 years in postgraduate program. I hand it over to Anirudh Paul.
Hello, I'm audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Manoj. The members of the management, the members of the staff, and the students for providing me this opportunity to address especially the student as well as the audience. Well, it has been an unprecedented year. Well, under normal condition, now we have forgotten what's normal also. In such a platform, we would be summarizing the activities, basically the successes, the achievements of KRVI over the past year. But I think we cannot start this address with the same tenor anymore. Well, from last year, that is March 2020 onwards, till date, it has been an apocalypse for mankind. I believe our generation has never experienced a collective disaster of this form and magnitude. In fact, the notions of free mobility, of proximate exchanges of people, which were made possible through liberalization, through globalization, has been completely challenged, at least for some time to come. In fact, the second wave seems to have confirmed it. It's far more devastating than the first. It has thrown new challenges to us, which I understand can and has been addressed. And it has only been addressed because of collective participation of all at the KRVI. Well, the faculty, the administration, the management, and the students alike. I'll just take time to recount 3 of these challenges because these are very important. I think these need to be mentioned. First, a lot of our students, faculties, their families, health have been affected by the pandemic. In such cases, families as a whole have suffered, both physically and mentally. Some families have lost precious lives also. Students who are confined in single space in the pandemic, not meeting their friends, had to go through mentally harrowing times. Novel process of learning in architecture, that is by seeing, touching, experiencing, interacting with peers, has been completely disrupted. Leave alone for many who did not have even the infrastructure that is required for online education. Moreover, digital interaction might not be as pleasurable as analog exchanges, and I can vouch for that. Screen time can be extremely stressful. The KRVI stands by all those who have gone through such difficult times and is attempted to address their concern with utmost care. In fact, the faculty and the administration, I know, have played a very important role in addressing such concern. In fact, a special mention must be made to the year masters who were mentors for our students during these difficult times. I know that they have interacted with students. They have actually listened to their problems and has been able to counsel them, whether together, whether successfully, we have tried. Second, there has been loss of livelihoods that many of our near and dear ones have experienced. Though we are a private institution completely funded by students' fee, we have made every attempt to see first that education continues and the families affected financially be given flexible options. In fact, some of our alumni and other donors have also tried to help needy students directly or indirectly. In some cases, faculty also who accepted delayed payments have given us support and cooperation in the college. We would complete a year of such financial difficulty only because we got support from all stakeholders associated with the KRVI, the students, the parents, the faculty, the management. I think I would like to thank them all. The third, which is the most important, is the challenge to adopt to a mode of education where a lot of learning is based basically in architecture on immediate interaction with students and faculty in studios. Also, a lot of learning depends on learning from sites, through our study trips. That was not possible for a complete year now. We had to shift to an online mode of education, and it has its own challenges. And I think we have been resilient enough to come through these challenges. And when I use the word resilience, I'm talking about resilience which has led to innovations. Resilience can bring us back to normal. Resilience can lead to innovation. And I'm talking about resilience which can lead to innovations. Okay, so while on one hand, we are able to organize lectures and classes in ways we had never imagined before in the online mode. Now we record and as well as archive our lectures which presents an opportunity of what is called asymmetric learning. It provides new opportunity for faculty to prepare their lectures so that the content can be delivered in multiple ways and also in different times as the students have access. In the students' feedback also, they have noted that the lectures classes that were recorded to which students could go through later were much better than normal modes of discussion in classroom teaching, which is not always recorded, which has not been recorded, but this now is recorded, so you can go through it. And that has been an opportunity, I believe, many of our faculties have risen to, many of our studios have risen to, and that I believe is something which we can innovate further. However, teaching studio remains a challenge. These projects where a lot of work was based on study trips are not possible. We have tried to address these concerns by choosing sites which were probably localized, where students inhabit the sites themselves. We tried to interact individually as collaboratively with students digitally to simulate new learning environments. However, the challenge remains. It remains especially because it takes a toll on the health and the mind. Apart from that, I must say that the students have risen to the challenge of participating in these modes of juries. At this juncture, I must congratulate the final year bachelor's as well as master's students who have demonstrated that this can be done successfully in this new mode. Some of the juries that used digital mode to explore videos, walkthroughs, online exhibition spaces that you have just seen were phenomenal. I think those were the innovations which this pandemic provided. They can be considered a level of innovation that are only possible during such times of crisis. It's heartening to know that many KRVI students have been able to take up these challenges and do these very, very well. And I must again congratulate, I know Meenal has done it, I must again congratulate all the fifth year students and the master students who have participated and experimented in these juries and made them successful. As I understand, the school would like to work with this further, with the idea of online education further, by incorporating now in this new term to come, what is called the learning management platform, where actually course structure can be shared digitally, course content can be shared digitally, submissions can be collected digitally, and also evaluations can be done, in which there can be multiple stakeholders. It need not be only faculty, it can be students also who can see their courses, who can actually submit their courses, and finally faculty can evaluate them. And we want to incorporate this platform in the next term. That's what I understand our new director also would like to do. We intend to start this from the month of May. In the digital environment, we have been able to conduct a lot of online workshops called professional development workshops for many of our projects, project called the BRUCOM project, which is funded by the European Union. That had these component of professional development workshops, and many of them have been done by our faculty, or even our partner institutions, and they have been very, very successful. They have been attended by over 1,000 professionals and academicians from various sometimes architects, sometimes urban design, planning, other fields also. And also, like, even we have tried to get our KRMLS, our design dissertation colloquium, which has been successfully initiated online through the leadership of our new director. I'm sure he will speak about this more in his future speech, but it is something which has been extremely innovative. And I want to end this by hoping that soon we can reclaim our physical learning spaces. We need the physical learning spaces, but incorporating the new experiments that we have acquired from this crisis. I think we need a combination of both. And that's with that, I would like to end my address, and I would like to invite Professor Sergio Porta to address the student body. Professor Sergio Porta, welcome. A nice meeting you two now.
Well, yes, indeed, challenging times all over the place. I could repeat word by word what you said. Aniruddha, it happened in Glasgow as well. So, dear KRVIA Director Manoj Parmar and former Director Aniruddha Paul, thank you very much for having me here. And it's good to see you both after a long time, and I hope there will be a chance to catch up in person soon. Dear faculty members, and especially dear students and families, this is your day. Yeah, this is your day. It is done. Thank you very much for being here in this big day, and thank you for having me here and listening to me in this luminous day. It is not me you have to blame for this, but rather your director and former director risk-taking attitude and warm friendship, and Dr. Binti Singh as well. It is definitely their fault for having me here. It is a big, big day indeed. Many of you students are not students anymore by now, or will not be in a few minutes, and will never be again. Although this is obviously not true in practice, since your learning curve has not finished here. Some would argue it is just starting now, in fact, but just changed its appearance somehow, to leave the substance unaltered. The appearance is nevertheless important, and let me warn all of you, joyful and achieving students, one thing will definitely never be the same from now on: responsibility. Okay, this is just to spoil the party and charge your shoulders with some weight, in case you were thinking this speech was just to be light and fun throughout. Okay, no, just kidding. I promise I will try to do my best not to play too hard. And with this in mind, let me start off in a slightly anecdotal fashion. It was a bright day of September, many years ago. It was 1982. I was, hard to believe, 18 years old. Yes, that happened to me as well once. And only a few weeks earlier in Italy. Italy won the World Cup. Football, of course. There are priorities in life, aren't there? So there is myself, sitting in the car with my dear Uncle Piero at the steering wheel. Piero, now over 80 and retired, was at that time a very successful and incredibly busy professional architect and academic in Milan. And that day, with my utmost surprise, he decided to take one full day off from his office to bring me around the city. The unthinkable can happen sometimes. And show me the marvelous buildings of the Milanese modern architectural tradition that he passionately supported. A few days later, I was to start myself the first year at the Politecnico Milan as a fresh student of architecture. So willing or not, that drive with Piero turned out to be my initiation in the world of architecture. Quite clearly, nothing would have ever been the same for me after that. It was with him, tutoring me, and literally hand in hand, bringing me through, walking me through the built works of Aldo Rossi and Giorgio Grassi and Caccia Dominioni, Muzio, Gregotti, Figini Pollini, and his beloved Joe Ponti, and others, that I was introduced to the pantheon of the heroes. And, well, let this remain with us only, please. Don't tell anybody this. As I was walked across the neat stereometric geometries of those sculptural objects shining in the sun, celebrated all over the world, which made me the identity of generations of famous godfathering figures in the university I was about to start with, I perfectly remember that I thought, gee, how deadly bad this stuff is. Yes, what I was looking at was, well, it was kind of a disaster. Somehow it felt so clear and loud here in my chest. I remember perfectly, after nearly 40 years, like if it was today, the feeling of an incumbent, lifeless disaster exploded in my heart in the same very moment in which Pierre explained to me patiently and competently why all of that was undoubtedly inherently good. And I loved and admired Pierre with all my heart. So there was only one explanation, quite obvious in this situation. It was me. It was me who just did not understand architecture and design. In fact, well, that was why I was about to start a school of architecture after all, right? Makes sense, no? And the objective of my studies, the reason why my family paid abundant expenses of my move to Milan became tangibly clear all of a sudden. I was there to learn why and how that thing that felt so poor and left me in such a poor state of mind and was actually great. And you could bet on it, I would have sat down and learned that at my best until I would have made it. After all, I was a very good one, wasn't I? So I would have shown it. And indeed, it took a surprisingly short time. It was very quick. In only a few weeks, I already started to get the point. In a few years, I had become intellectually able to handle the story, and before I knew it, I was as passionate about it as my dear Uncle Pierre, and probably more. But happiness, well, happiness was not there. Or not there as I would have imagined. In all truth, that was the beginning of another story then, a story of a very long and somehow cumbersome process of questioning and researching the same foundations of what I had become. The learning curve was really steep, and that was at times very painful. It is not a long time then that I can articulate in plain words and simple terms what all that had been about, and not long I can link it back to that beautiful day of early September in Milan with my Uncle Piero. And here it is for you. What I actually experienced that day was the beginning of a split. First of all, a split in my soul. A split that years and years of hard and passionate studies only contributed to enlarge and make harder and harder and harder, until I could not bear it anymore. And one day, which I also remember, another shining realization fell on me. Maybe it is not the world that does not understand me. Maybe it is me who don't understand the world. Maybe there is something wrong there in what I am as a designer. So today I'm going to tell you this. Do not accept ever that your feelings are not important. That when it comes to designing buildings or streets or squares or little pieces of furniture or whatever, in fact, you can't rely on feelings. That would be childish. That come on, grow up, finances, responsibilities, time constraints, expectations, and employees, and yet do never think even for a moment that if something feels bad and does so authentically, it nevertheless for some reason is good. That does never happen, not really. That I learned that such profound divide, which sets your feelings apart from your intellectual beliefs, was in fact just one manifestation of an even more profound divide of the inner self from the world outside of us, the divide that sits in the very heart of our Western civilization. And many more divides after that, for example, the divide of knowledge into disconnected specialist bins. Scopus, for example, stores scientific literature in more than 300 different subject areas. Indeed, a long, adventurous and extraordinary pathway that led us from the Middle Age to flying over the clouds while drinking a good coffee at more than 10,000 miles per hour of speed, and in fact speaking to each other in real time from thousands of kilometers of distance. And yet, has not made us 1 inch more capable of generating a flower, or a baby, or understanding a metaphor, or making a good joke. Because when it comes to apples, we still have to plant apple seeds. When it comes to life, we still have to love the land, and ourselves, and our community. We still have to trust others and earn their trust. And when it comes to others, we still have to understand what is unspoken, what lies well under the surface, what is defensive speaking and what is authentic speaking, and intimate disclosure. What stays to the surface and what lies deeper in what we as designers put our hands on, being these walls or roofs or gardens or trees or mountains at distance or grass under our feet. Some would call it the intricate web of life. This is where ultimately lives everything that is good to us, to others, and to the land. This is where we can find essentially all that we will ever design. This is the matter and scope of design. All the rest are means. And in case you thought that I could have finished this speech without mentioning climate change, well, this is the point where we realize you were wrong. The matter we design is inherently interwoven, inseparable from the larger wholes it is made of, embedded in space, and space is active. Every single time you move a chair, you are not the same. The split I felt that day of 40 years ago is eventually the end of the chain. The one that makes us believe we can keep spoiling the planet ceaselessly, drive cars ceaselessly, breathe polluted air ceaselessly, and never pay the toll of breaking the web of life at industrial scale. And here we are now, inhabitants of the world. This is global, and yet we can't move out from our home, speaking across the seas and the mountains in real time, and yet we can't shake our hands or share our food in brotherhood. It is on that split between feelings and cognition that the chain of all divides that sets us apart from the world starts and grows, and leads us now in front of a major historical crisis that is in fact three, not one, since it has to do with ecology, but also with equality, and ultimately with health. And we can easily see that these three here, there is no divide between them. We can't approach one without at the same time approaching all the others and think we can do anything about it. There is no one single handle to grab here. There is no technical solution only, no technological salvation alone. The only salvation that we have is first and foremost and only deep in ourselves. And that means that it is transformational, that it is transitional. And yes, with all my apologies, my brilliant, successful students, this is a responsibility that our generation of shallow, proud, left-brainers are passing on to yours. It is a huge one, and it does belong to you, my fellow architects, urban designers, and conservationists. And as a father myself, I really, really hope you will take good care of it. It is my understanding that the form this responsibility takes is that of a journey, one that, however, you can't know the final destination of, and you will have to undertake exploratively, step by step, making sense of each step along the way. A journey which is inherently uncertain, the uncertainty of which you will have to embrace and understand and treasure. This is part of what you are going to learn. A journey that is transitional from one form of civilization that we know because we have grown up with it, to a new one we can't even imagine from the outset. A journey that needs, in Peter Buchanan's words, a big rethink, a big one. That means resetting, really. And to be very clear, my fellow beautiful students, we in the West have not much to teach you about this. We, come to you roughly bare hands. We are looking at you, actually, to learn from. The golden drop is here, in India, in Asia, somewhere in your past and in yourself, in your collective generational self as well. Search for it, trust it, rely on it, show us the way. Chris Alexander once said, what it would be like to live in a mental world where one's reason for making something functionally and one's reason for making something a certain shape or in a certain ornamental way are coming from precisely the same place in you, precisely the same place. Start from here, my brilliant new graduates, and enjoy the journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio. That was a very encouraging and inspiring and provoking speech. And with this, we will now move forward and will present the names of the students who are graduating the bachelor's program.
USM KRPIA Convocation Ceremony for the graduating students of the BArch program under the University of Mumbai. Graduating students Radhika Agarwal, Ankita Agawne, Vidushi Agarwal, Hitakshi Agrawal, Tejal Agrawal, Pallavi Avinashe, Deepa Bansal, Shreya Bansal, Isha Bhimani, Neha Bunlia, साहिल छाया, आशना दागा, जानवी डेढ़िया, अजिंक्य देखने, देव देसाई, प्रणाली देसाई, यशदा देशपांडे, मानसी धिवर, मेहल डोळस, श्रेया द्विवेदी, प्रज्वल गायकवाड, ऋतु गाला, महक घेमावट, केयूर गोहिल, ख्याति गोयल, कनिका गुप्ता, कृतिका जगताप, अंकिता जाधव, रुचा जयखेडकर, मोनिल जेठवा, राज कटारिया, श्रेया कामत, ऐश्वर्या कांबळे, श्रिया कांबळी, सलोनी कपूर, सुप्रिया कसाळे, अनुष्का कुबसट, रोहित कुडाळे, निकिता कुलकर्णी, उक्ती कुलकर्णी, अनुष्का कुरियन, दक्षिणा मुरलीधर, यश दबालिया, सुयश महेश्वरी, सानिका मालवणकर, हर्षवी ममानिया, बंसी मेहता, राधिका मेहता, यश मेहता, शिवानी नार्वेकर, नीरज सुरेश, निकिता मनु, करण पारेख, प्रणाली पटेल, तानिया पाटिल, जय पिपालिया, कृषिका पुजारी, निधि पुजारी, ऋतुजा पोते, दर्श सैनी, जिल सालिया, यश सालियन, संयुक्ता राजीव, मैथिली साठे, सौरभ सतपुते, हर्ष शाह, हिलोनी शाह, पलक शाह, प्राची शाह, रजत शर्मा, संप्रीति शेठ, सिद्धार्थ शेवड़े, शिरिन शिकलगर, समीरा सुए, विदुला तारे, आदित्य थोले, सूरज थोराट, आंचल तुलसिया, तोशी तुसम, समकित वकील, साध्वी वंजारे, आयुष वीरा, रुचि जानी, श्रेया आमरे, यश बरहाते, अंकित जाधव, आनंदिता रंगराजन, दीपम सागर, साक्षी सावंत, दामिनी पाटिल, आसरा अंसारी, and Rima Khudkhuya. Congratulations.
Moving ahead, we will now present the names of the students who are graduating the master's program.
USM's KRVIA Convocation Ceremony for graduating students, Masters of Architecture in Urban Design under University of Mumbai. Graduating students, Barate Shivadni, Didolkar Suruchi, Jain Daksh, Date Shriya, Malaya Sanjana, Parmar Dulari, Bendre Swara, Khatod Namrata, Bhakre Shitija, Agarwal Darshana, Oswal Shashank, Varma Varsha, Ahire Prajakta, Patil Gaurav, Katke Niketa, Gosavi Swecha, Ninave Pooja, Vadhe Pandurang, Khabia Hina. USM's KRVIA Convocation Ceremony for graduating students, Masters of Architecture in Urban Conservation under University of Mumbai. Graduating students, Vaidya Zai, Pathak Nikhil, Joshi Siddhi, Deshpande Aditi, Iyer Gayatri, Agarwal Sugandha, Chalani Chandan, Khilji Shraddha, Jadon Kavita, Dubey Rajlakshmi, Chotani Hanisha, Parate Nitin, Salonke Shamli, Singh Sonali, Savant Prerna, Thakur Shivangi, Kotkar Sharvari, Solanki Siddhi, Shah Jharna, Shinde Amruta, Jaiswal Gunjan. Congratulations to the graduating students of batch 2020.
Congratulations, students. Graduates at bachelor's as well as at master's level eagerly wait for this day where their ideas, their hard work are appreciated. We would love to move forward to the award distribution ceremony now. I would like to invite Mr. Kabra, Chairman of our Governing Council, to begin with the distribution of the awards in the category of overall academic performance for both bachelor's as well as master's. Over to you, Mr. Kabra.
You are on mute, sir. Kabraji, you're on mute.
काबरा जी अनम्यूट कीजिए।
Meenal, maybe we can go ahead with the next set of awards while Mr. Kabra joins back.
Oh, sure. Well, the next much awaited category of awards is the best performance in the Bachelor's Design Studios and academic proficiency in the final year, for which I would like to invite Mr. Akshay Raheja, member of our governing council, to distribute the awards. Over to you, Mr. Raheja.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
So I should just read out the names, right? Meenal, I have to just read out the names, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So in the first year, the award goes to Miss Namya Mehrotra and Miss Tanvi Daga. Second year, the best performance in Bachelor's Design Studio goes to Miss Nishanti Srinivasan and Miss Ritika Somani. In the third year, the award goes to Mr. Tanay Kapadia and Miss Janumi Shah. In the fourth year, the award goes to Mr. Yash Gorecha and Miss Amruta Halagekar. In the fifth year, the award goes to Miss Nidhi Pujari and Miss Vidushi Agarwal. The citation for academic proficiency in the final year of B.Arch goes to Mr. Dev Desai. Congratulations to all the students.
Thanks. You're on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, Meenal.
Something got stuck with my mouse. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Raheja. Another very eagerly awaited category of awards are design dissertation and the postgraduate design studio, for which I would like to invite Mr. Satish, Chairman of College Development Committee, to distribute the awards. Over to you, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, there are 3 citations for design dissertation. One is Miss Anandita Rangarajan. Second is Miss Shreya Bansal. And third is Mr. Suraj Thorat. Congratulations to all 3 of them for this bachelor's design dissertation citations. As far as postgraduate design studio performance is concerned, for first year Remark Urban Design, Miss Saili Majumdar. First year Remark Urban Conservation, Miss Purva Joshi. Final year Remark Urban Design, Miss Suruchi Didolkar. And final year Remark Urban Conservation, Miss Aditi Deshpande. Congratulations to all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Kabra, could you please?
Abraji is disconnected. Yes.
Am I visible now?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Audible?
Yeah.
Sorry for the technical problem. I'm very happy to announce these prizes for the academic performance for the year 2019-20 for both bachelor's and master's degrees. Last 1 year had been something unprecedented, never heard of, never imagined. Maybe for last 100 years, not for India, but anywhere in the world. But I feel we have come out victorious, at least for the first phase of COVID. We have been able to continue, perform, complete our academic studies for the students, online teaching, totally new experiences. But we've been able to handle all these things and come out victorious. And I'm sure now the second phase started now, which looks to be more dangerous. We will win over that phase also. Anyway, this is all part of the game in the life. We have to face such things. But definitely, I'm sure this must have given us a lot of experience to all the students, faculty, and everybody to face any type of difficulties in the life. And the batch which is passed through this year to 1920 for bachelors and masters, for them it will be an experience. And definitely, I am confident this experience is ultimately going to help in the professional career in our life. So I will first of all congratulate all the students who have won these prizes based on academic performance. First year bachelor's, Miss Ambika Lamba. Congratulations, Miss Ambika. Second year bachelor's, Miss Ritika Somani. Congratulations, Ritika. Third year bachelor's, Mr. Vaibhav Jain. Congratulations, Vaibhav. Fourth year bachelor's, Miss Rishita Nanda. Congratulations, Rishita. And fifth year bachelor's, Mr. Dev Desai. Congratulations, Mr. Dev. So I congratulate all the prize winners. I'm sorry we are not able to give these prizes in person, but anyway, we congratulate everybody. Then coming to the master's degrees, masters are first year MArch Urban Design, Miss Saili Majumdar. Congratulations, Saili. Then first year MArch Urban Conservation, Miss Purva Desai. Congratulations, Purva. Coming to the masters for the final year, MArch Urban Design, Miss Shivagni Baneta. Miss Shivagni Banate, sorry. Miss Shivagni Banate. Congratulations, Shivagni. Final year MArch Urban Conservation, Miss Jai Vaidya. Congratulations, Miss Jai. I congratulate all the students who got the prizes, and I'm sure you will keep up in the life and keep on getting the prizes in your life for different works which you will be doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kabraji.
Thank you, Mr. Cabra. We would like to move on to present, and we would like to invite master students to present the testimonials from the graduating batch of 2020. Sorry, over to you.
Good evening, all the dignitaries, guests, faculty members, staff, and my fellow students. First and foremost, I would like to thank the committee that organized Urban Dialogue and this convocation ceremony, and my batchmates for allowing me to speak on their behalf. I'm Swara Bendre, and I'll be representing Krivia's Remark in Urban Design and Urban Conservation, batch of 2018-20. It's going to be a challenge to summarize 2 years worth of experience of 37 people in just a few minutes, but I'm going to give it a shot. Before that, I'm going to address the elephant in this room. Okay, maybe not in this room, but on our screens, in our individual rooms. I know since the day we joined Krvia back in 2018, we all have been eager as to when we get to wear the white attire with a blue sash around our collars on the day we get our degrees handed over to us at Kefi Azmi Park. Today is that day. Our graduation is formally complete. But unfortunately, because of this pandemic, we're still sitting at homes and having this convocation virtually. Come to think of it, our batch is the only one that truly got to experience it all, ranging from all the encounters, exchange programs, workshops, study trips, night stays, and online juries, to all the potlucks, house parties, birthdays, and important discussions at TAP and BSc. You name it, and our batch has done it. Even when we had to move to the online portals, we still managed to throw in a session of online Antakshari in the mix of online submissions and virtual juries. Through all these experiences, we got to see ourselves in a new light. I'm sure I don't just speak for myself when I say that in these 2 years, we expanded. Our knowledge, our vision, our scope, our ambition are all twice of what they were when we joined. In a world beyond Krvia, we proudly present ourselves as the alumni of this institute. Krvia has groomed us to face the professional world with strong basics, broad perspectives, and a holistic outlook. In these 2 years, the faculties and the staff have provided us with a plethora of knowledge and an apt infrastructure for the same. I know the students have put in their 1000% to get an exceptional outcome as well. It has been a venturesome journey for everyone, and today marks a big milestone in this journey. A payday for all the sleepless nights and hectic days we put in. But this is just a milestone, not the end. Because throughout these 2 years, I have seen many budding researchers, theorists, academicians, experts, activists, teachers, and practitioners in my fellows. I envision this bunch of individuals blossoming into a bouquet of people who will make their mark in the future. To make them all, teachers have also put in their best. Nowhere else have I seen teachers so engaged and approachable. I mean, I'm sure my senior alumni and my batchmates will vouch for it when I say that you can feel their willingness to help you even after you've left the place. I thank Krvia for providing me with a platform to be amongst individuals with such a vast variety of backgrounds and experiences. The times I spent with them have been most enriching for me, both on the professional and personal front. For all the teachers, I know that there'll be more batches to come. There'll still be arguments over UC and UD workloads. There'll still be plenty of requests for extensions. But you too know that you found an extraordinary batch with us. We are sure you will miss us. Just a small note for the upcoming batches. You are amongst remarkable individuals in the form of your faculties and peers. It's one of the rare chances in your life. Acknowledge it, cherish it, and make the most of it. I wish you all the best for all the tough times to come. Pull through it because it really pays off well. With this, I end my speech. Once again, thanks to Krvia for everything it has given to us. Congratulations to all the people graduating today. And kudos to Animal Farm for being promoted to a united stable of strong individuals. Thank you all and stay safe.
Thanks.
Thank you, Swara. That was a very nice speech. And everything good comes to an end. So, this ceremony, at the end of it, I would like to call upon our director Manoj to give a closing remarks. Over to you, Manoj.
Thanks, Minal. That was a very inspiring, motivating event, and very inspiring speeches by various dignitaries. And I feel privileged to be part of this event. As we look back over last few years, certainly there was a beginning, and thankfully there was also progress. And yes, undeniably, we have been successful. During last year, we encountered various issues due to lockdown, and with some trails and tribulation along the way, soldiered on and came out stronger. Especially during this phase, we have experienced moments, memories that will be fondly remembered in years to come. Graduation is not just end of one journey, but continuation with determination, willingness to move forward, which are characterized by global in thought, empathetic in practice, compassion and objective in action. I like to end my speech with a big thanks to faculties, administration for their relentless work for past 3 weeks to make this event successful and make everyone proud of this event. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone. And I further request the organizer to play the national anthem. Thank you.
Thank you, Manoj. On behalf of the team of KRDI, I would like to thank our chief guest, Mr. Sergio, our governing council members, academic members, other participants, our students, and their families. I would like to thank our faculty members who worked tirelessly to make this event successful. As a parting note to our students graduating today, we all wish you all the luck and success. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly happy, as very nicely said by Professor Sergio, is to do what you really believe in. Keep your mind open to new ideas and possibilities, and then you will probably walk towards, or stumble upon, or run towards what you really love. As alumni, please keep in touch with us. We hope to see received in an autonomous capacity. Congratulations to all of you once again, and thank you all of you who are assembled to make this event successful and memorable. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Mantri ji. Thanks, Akshay, Kabra ji, Damle ji, and all the members of Nagar Shikshan Mandal. I'd like to extend my special thanks to Sergio, Ombrita, and Alessandra for making it and staying with us for 3 solid hours. And I think it's something we will remember. It's going to set a new trend for the Urban Dialogue event for coming years, with some more book launches by other authors, and maybe your team once again, maybe in the future, we'd like to see back here. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you all.
Thank you for this. Thank
It's
you.
been an honor.
Thank you. Really, it was an honor.
And I request our KRVI faculty to stay back. Thank you, everyone.
Stay safe.
Stay safe, all of you.